Seeing it's 6:02, I'd like to call the September 21st, 2022 regular meeting of the Kansas City Council to order. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening and ask that if you're able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger,
Present.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Here.
Mayor Gabriel,
Here.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Here.
Councilmember Naxted,
Here.
Councilmember Sonart,
Here.
Councilmember Baisden,
Here.
and Councilmember Petty.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up, we have agenda approval. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel.
Oh, before we get to that,
approval of
excuse me.
Yes.
Before we do that, I'd like to draw your attention to the laydown you should have in front of you with requested additions to the packet. Action, add item D2, ordinance number 3307-2022, amendment memo requested by Councilmember Baisden. Action, add item D8, ordinance number 3313-2022, postponement memo requested by administration. And then add to item D12, resolution number 2022-64, postponement memo requested by administration. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the agenda with the add items D2, D8, and D12 and request unanimous consent.
I'll second.
Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the body that would like to amend the consent agenda at this time?
Ask for unanimous.
Thank you. Seeing no prospective amendments to the agenda, to the consent agenda, Madam Clerk, would you please read that into the record?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Approval of the regular meeting minutes of September 7th, 2022. New business action approval, bills to be ratified, brought to you by the administration. New business action approval, special use permit for Corvus Airlines, Inc., DBA Raven Alaska, LLC, for use of 1,200 square feet of warm storage of a de-ice vehicle. Introduced by the administration, and ordinance number 3317-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport fund and appropriating funds in the airport snow removal equipment capital project fund for the purchase of snow removal equipment, attachments, and installation of a gate. Brought to you by the administration, public hearing on October 5th, 2022, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to any item that is on the consent agenda, which was just read into the record? Anybody online? No. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. We have no scheduled public comments this evening. Under unscheduled public comment, is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Ms. Nelson.
Apologize for the interruption, but I can't hear anything that she is saying. Is she on the microphone?
Sorry, Henry. Yeah, there we go. We got to push the button on there.
No, just press that button so it's green. Thank you.
How's that?
There.
Ooh, that's loud.
Much better.
Right there. Well, Henry, just to tell you that the harvest auction is Saturday night and it is sold out and will be a great event. There's a lot of items, so it's going to go fast and furious, and there'll probably be a few bargains in there. That's it. And the rest of the stuff will come later.
Thank you, Marion. See you there Saturday. I did stop to get by, pick up my tickets, and they said I could pick them up there, so.
That's right.
Yeah, very
That's
good.
right.
Thank you, because they are reserved, so just want to make sure.
Appreciate you doing
Perfect.
that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time on anything that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearings under item D1, ordinance number 3306-2022, amending Kenai Municipal Code 7.15.020, purchasing requiring council approval to provide increased flexibility for the administration to conduct city business while maintaining sufficient safeguards to protect the public interest. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Baisden.
Yes, I'd like to move to enact ordinance 3306-2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3306-2022? Do we have anybody online? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to speak to the ordinance, and then I could have maybe the finance director or city manager also step in if we have any technical questions. This ordinance is intended to amend Kenai Municipal Code for purchasers requiring council approval. Right now, there is a $15,000 threshold that was set back in 2005. This ordinance is looking to increase the purchase threshold from $10,000 to $35,000. It will add an amendment that allows administration to increase POs and contracts by 15% without additional council approval. And council still approves the budget, so this is not going to do anything with the budget amounts that we approve on an annual basis. Checks and balances are still in place. And this will allow pretty much the directors and the chiefs, the finance director and the city manager to work more efficient within operating the city business.
Thank you. Further comments? Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, I see the intent of this ordinance, and I can see that it gives more flexibility to our management. And looking at the number, $35,000, it doesn't go far anymore. With the inflation that we've had and the prior limitations. In 2005 we increased from 2,500 to 15, and here all these years later we're going to double that 15 to roughly 30, and that's probably in keeping in with real dollar cost going year for year. Is that your concept, James?
You're close.
Yeah. So I will be supporting this, especially since there's the idea that there will be feedback and there'll be advice and consent, and just so we know about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I will also be supporting this ordinance, and I expect to be, for the same reason, supporting the following ordinance. I agree with Vice Mayor Glendenning, through cost of living and increases and whatnot and inflation, that it makes sense. First thing I did on council about 8 years ago was, along with another council member, we revised the purchasing code significantly. We did not touch this portion, and I think that now is the time, and I think it's very reasonable to do so. And I'd encourage others to vote yes on this as well.
Councilmember Petty.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mayor. I did speak with Mr. Eubanks when this came before us, and asking if this had any effect on our finance policy, on how we do our budget and how we stay within the guidelines of that, so that we have fiscal responsibility. And he said no, that this did not affect that in any way. And so I feel like that this is a very needed and worthwhile opportunity for us, and I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too will be in support of this. I appreciate Council Member Baisden for bringing this one as well as the next ordinance forward. we've seen, like everyone else has said, an inflation and cost, and I appreciate the housekeeping and looking at these things and doing that housekeeping for us. Thank you.
Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too will be supporting this, and thank you to Councilmember Baisden for bringing the monetary level up to 2022.
Thank you. Just a quick question, just for folks online for transparency. Where would this be reflected? Any additional changes? Would this be under PO approval in the packet, Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, so right now, all POs in excess of 15,000 are subject to approval by council. This would move that to 35,000. And also, it does allow increases in POs up to 15% on those those POs without coming back to council as well.
Very good. I too will be supporting this. Just wanted that clarification of where folks online or listening would be able to, we're not changing this sort of requirement of where notice to council is made. It's just increasing that amount. Appreciate that. Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Nackstead?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3306, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we're on item D2, ordinance number 3307-2022, amending Kenai Municipal Code 7.25.020, city budget control to provide increased flexibility in the expenditure of funds and management of city budgets while maintaining adequate internal controls to protect the public's interest. Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to enact ordinance 3307, 2022, and I have an amendment.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3307-2022? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I read the amendment that I need to make changes?
Yes.
Thank you. So this amendment will take place within Section 1. Section 1 is amended the first sentence of 7.25020A by deleting A and adding an S to the department in the phrase by up to $10,000, $10,000 between the accounts of a department within a fund. After amendment, the first sentence of 7.25020A should read, after approval by the finance director as to availability of unencumbered balances, transfers up to the amount of available funds may be made in line item accounts within a department of a fund and by up to $10,000 between the accounts of the department within a fund.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Second. Discussion. Would you like to just explain the amendment, Mr. Baisden?
Thank you. This was, when I was doing the memo today, the finance director and I think the city manager both, they found the typo where I had left out just kind of the, some of the plural of the word. Am I thinking of that correct for the city manager? Did I get that correctly?
Yeah, just for clarification, no material amendment necessarily, I guess is where I was going with that, so, yeah,
Thank you. That's correct, Mayor.
yes.
And I would like to speak to the ordinance.
Go ahead, Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. So currently, any budget transfer of $5,000 or more requires council approval. This limit was set in 2005. Administration has put forward numerous resolutions annually based on these limits, which are almost always unanimously approved by council. Proposed changes to Kenai Municipal Code would give the administration the ability to move funds between a department account from $5,000 to $10,000, allowing the city manager the ability to move unlimited funds within a department fund. This reduces legislative items brought to council, eliminates the need to repeat budget revisions between capital project accounts for what the budget is unchanged. And again, council still maintains overall control for the budget.
Thank you. Further discussion? Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yeah, and I will be supporting this. Just a question of term unlimited. That's, usually we, within department budget, we set, dollar expectations for a certain project or a piece of equipment or whatnot. But if something is fundamentally shifted, you'll tell us, right?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Glendenning. So the unlimited, these are accounts within that fund, so they're operational accounts. So we're still limited by the budget as set by council. But if you have extra money in one account line, say professional services, and you need that to supplement personnel, for example, because you had a huge snow year and you had to spend more overtime, it would allow us to move. Right now, it's $5,000 we can move into personnel. This would allow us, as long as there's a budgeted amount within that department, we could move unlimited amounts to fill that need within that department.
Okay, I would suggest a good example might be the tenuous position we have with the PU fishery. It puts us in the fishing business, and sometimes we have improvident cash flow surprises. And so, yeah, I think this is a good tool to use. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Basin?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So I think also a good example would be the fuel costs that we're dealing with within the departments, and how sometimes changes have to take place, and also with the inflation issue that we're dealing with within the economy right now. It just gives greater structure for the administration to move those funds that we have allowed them to have within the budget, so that, again, the budget doesn't change, just allows them movement within the funds.
Yeah, I think even within our packet this evening, we have two cases of employees that left and cash leave-in. I think that would qualify. Would that be correct, Mr. Ostrander? That we're just having a supplemental because they're over what was budget or expected.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, so with the cash, if the cash leave-in was in excess of what you had budgeted, you would need extra money in the personnel, and you could move that through this ordinance. We could move it from a different account into that to fill that need.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll on ordinance number 3307-2022 as amended.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. For clarification, was the amendment approved by unanimous consent?
I request unanimous consent, please.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now we are voting on ordinance 3307-2022 as amended. And, sorry, I have to. Mayor Gabriel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes?
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3307-2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, item D3, ordinance number 3308-2022, accepting and appropriating a grant from the state of Alaska for the purchase of library materials. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Basin.
Make a motion to enact ordinance 3308-2022.
Second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3308-2022?
No hands raised.
No one in chambers and nobody online. Bring it back to council. Comments from council? Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Maybe just have the city manager give us an overview.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Baisden. So the library is awarded an annual public library assistance grant from the state of Alaska. This is this year's, and the amount is $7,000. Is $7,000. Ms. Wolf is in the back there. She could probably tell you if that's a similar amount to what we've seen in the past, but I believe this is right in the realm of what we normally receive, and this is, again, something that we receive annually from the state of Alaska.
Thank you. Further comments, discussion? I'd like to thank Ms. Wolf. I probably have to speak for council for her diligence to seek out these funds to keep our library going and updated. Thank you very much. Councilmember Naxted, you have your hand up?
Thank you. I did. Easier to do it this way, I
Yep.
think. But I would like to thank Katja for getting this grant for the library, as she does with all the other grants. But I appreciate each and every one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau.
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3308, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3309-2022, accepting and appropriating funds from the Public Library Association and AT&T for the Kenai Community Library's participation in the PLA Digital Literacy Workshop Training and Incentive. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Baisden.
Move to enact ordinance number 3309, 2022.
I second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3309-2022? Seeing none online or in chambers, we'll bring it back to council. Comment from council. Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Maybe another overview from the city manager for the public.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Baisden. So this was an application. This is the first time that the library has received this. Ms. Wolf applied for this, and it provides for basic digital literacy skills. So those within our community that have don't have the literacy skills in our digital world, this will help them learn some of those basic skills. There's going to be 2 things that Katja's group is going to do. One is to just a general audience of the community, and then there's going to be a second one that's going to be geared for the needs of our senior residents, and that's going to be held at the senior center. So it's an exciting opportunity for some of these folks that need those essential skills to learn them through the library.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes, through the mayor, I'd like to ask Ms. Wolf how these will be advertised and how the public will be aware.
Ms. Wolf.
Thank you. So part of the grant is an advertising budget, so we'll have about $500 that we can spend on advertising on Facebook, which seems to be working for us very well, and then also in the paper and on the radio.
Thank you. Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Ms. Wolf, thank you very much for pursuing this and getting this. When I read your memo, I was very excited to see the program for the seniors. I have a father that I wish I have sat next to him 3 or 4 times trying to get him to text, but he's 6,000 miles away, and I only get to do it once or twice a year. And he remembers it for about 24 hours until I fly home to Alaska. So anyway, thank you.
Further comments? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Katja, I just want to say thank you for doing this. There is definitely a need in this program. I worked at Alaska Communications when they still had their cell phone, and they actually would have smartphone workshops, and it would be full. We'd have a waiting list every month, and we would have 40, 50 people come in. And I mean, not all of them are old too. Some of them were in their 30s and 40s and just kind of getting into technology. And so there is definitely a need in our community, and I'm just glad to see this come forward.
Further comments? Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Katja, Library Director, for bringing this forward to us. And I also want to emphasize that the Council on Aging is very excited about this grant as well. Thank you.
Further comments, discussion? I did kind of chuckle when I read the ordinance and when you had, what you'd be purchasing, updated computer manual supplies for the workshop. For example, food, flash drives, and handouts. But I like the food part because you're sort of baiting the hook there. So I think you might get a higher attendance there. So further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau.
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3309, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have item D5, ordinance number 3310-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund police department for the receipt of a vehicle forfeited to the state of Alaska. Pleasure, Councilmember Baisden.
Move to enact ordinance number 3310, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3310-2022? Seeing none online, hearing none online, seeing none in chambers, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council, Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Maybe if we could get the police chief or city manager to go over how this program works and maybe what kind of vehicle and how it will be used.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Basin. I'd like Chief Ross to speak to this one.
Chief Ross.
Through the mayor, Councilor Baisden. So it's not uncommon for the state to get vehicles forfeited, typically from felony DUIs or other cases where the courts actually forfeited it to the state. We have historically gotten these vehicles for our use in the drug unit, the Regional Drug Task Force. So I'd actually prefer not to be any more specific about this specific vehicle and describe it. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Further discussion on ordinance number 3310-2022. Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3310-2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have item D6, ordinance number 3311-2022, determining that real property described as Lot 5, Block 1, Gusty Subdivision, Addition Number 1, according to plat number 83-126 KRD, city-owned airport land located outside the airport reserve, is not needed for a public purpose, waiving KMC 22.05.095, methods of sale or disposal, and authorizing the sale of the property to Aaron Swanson, doing business as Forever Business Plaza LLC. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Basin.
Move to enact ordinance 3311-2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3311-2022? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council? Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel.
Hey, Gabriel?
If we maybe get a chance to hear from the airport manager, I think there was some discussion about this property at the last meeting.
Mr. Ostrander.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel and Councilmember Baisden. I could certainly ask the airport manager to talk about what was discussed at the airport, but I could give just a short summary of this if council would like. So this property is the property that actually is one of 10 that was approved through Resolution 2018-12 to be sold to these properties that are currently under lease through certain criteria that were established in 2018-12. What this ordinance proposes to do is to sell this property to Aaron Swanson, who does business as Forever Business Plaza LLC, under the same authorization of the same tools that we did under 2018-12. In this case, Mr. Swanson has agreed to purchase the property at fair market value as determined by a fee appraisal, and then on top of that, place 25% of the fair market value in an escrow account that he would use to invest in the building itself. There were, I think, 4 properties that were actually sold under 2018-12. This is, again, one of those 10. But that's what this ordinance does, is proposes to sell it under the same terms and conditions that were under 2018-12. And as far as the Airport Commission, they did review the sale. I believe there is an amendment in the packet that explains that they did recommend approval.
Yes. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I can make that motion. I move to amend by filling in the blanks on the 12th and the 13 whereases clauses with the word approval.
Second.
Request unanimous consent.
Oh, thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, those amendments are approved. Further discussion on ordinance number 3311-2022? Councilmember Petty.
Yes, I would like to thank Mr. Swanson for investing in Kenai and wish him the very best with great prosperity and success with his business here in the city of Kenai.
Thank you, Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too just want to wish you the best. I think this is great, seeing this going forward. You know, we're longtime friends of the Moffis family. I know that they, you know, for a long time fought to be able to buy this, purchase this land. Unfortunately, when this came around, the health complications got in the way. So I'm just really grateful to see that you've stepped in and you're filling that vision that they had for that building and what they knew the potential of that location would be and what all it would offer. And so I just want to say thank you for stepping up for the family and continuing to build on that legacy that they had started in our city. And I want to wish you the best of luck in that location.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this as well, and I'd also like to say that I'm proud to be a part of the, as was Mayor Gabriel, of the original resolution back in 2018 that we're utilizing in this particular case, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I would just like to say that, you know, and just to give a little bit of insider thought into that process, was there were these airport lease properties outside the reserve that some of them were getting towards the end of their lease life, and the improvements on there were getting a little bit, you know, we want to incentivize folks, because when you think about if someone's getting towards the end of their lease and they don't have an out on that lease and they can't sell the property, then we could possibly end up with derelict properties. Or so the whole idea behind that was to, you know, have that 25% kicker in there where they could buy the property for appraised value, along with take that 25% as improvement into the structure of the building. So, you know, and this is kind of following along with that. Although Mr. Swanson's not the leaseholder we had at the time, the Moffses were, but this the concept in my mind still applies. So I will still be supporting this. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3311, 2022, as amended, is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3312-2022, determining Lot 4, Block 1, Gussie Subdivision Addition Number 1, amended as not needed for a public purpose, and approving the execution of a lease with an option to purchase between the city of Kenai and Aaron Swanson for the property. I also note that there's a substitute with this ordinance. Councilmember Basin.
Move to enact ordinance 3312, 2022, substitute? Not
The
yet?
ordinance first, then we'll
Ordinance
amend.
first, then
The
we'll go to
ordinance,
the
I'm sorry.
second.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3312-2022? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Basin.
I'd like to move to enact the substitute ordinance number 3312, 2022.
I'll second.
Public hearing.
I'm sorry.
You,
Oh, amend by substitute ordinance?
yeah, amend by substitute. Yeah, amend by substitute. Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry about that, amend by substitute.
Moved and seconded.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? So now before us, we have substitute ordinance 3312-2022 for folks keeping track. So,
Mayor Gabriel.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. Unless there's some other discussion at this time, I move to postpone ordinance 3313, 2022, substitute until our October 5th meeting.
Yeah, you're one ahead of us, I believe, Councilmember Naxton. We're on ordinance number 3312-2022, which is the,
Yep, you're right.
the substitute, yes.
I am. Apologize.
Discussion from council on what we have before us, substitute ordinance number 3312-2022. Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Member Gabriel. Maybe City Manager could give us an overview for this substitute.
Mr. Ostrander.
And thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Baisden. So this is actually the first instance where Title 22 of Kenai Municipal Code, where we've got an applicant that has requested a lease with an option to purchase, that we've actually brought to council since the code was updated in 2018. So it's exciting to see this coming forward. Again, the applicant is Aaron Swanson, doing business as Forever Business Plaza LLC. So in this case, what this ordinance will do is it authorizes the lease of this property. There's also a commitment on the part of Mr. Swanson to develop improvements on the property. Those are listed in Section 5 of the substitute ordinance, which is to develop a restaurant space capable of providing drive-through and carry-out service with outdoor eating space and parking, including a U-shaped drive-through around the building structure, and a restaurant-type building structure of approximately 450 square feet, which will be developed in a manner to allow for expansion. Estimated development cost of this project for site improvements and construction, but excluding land costs and restaurant equipment, is $200,000. So this makes a commitment on the part of the applicant to construct those improvements within 2 years of execution of the lease. Once those improvements are completed, it also gives him the option to purchase the property at that point. This property sale also is eligible for lease incentives, which our lease incentives will pay lease for up to 5 years. However, this ordinance itself does not approve that. That would have to be something that would be taken back to council to actually approve those development, or those lease incentives. And if Mr. Swanson is interested in taking advantage of those, which I would guess he probably will be, council will be seeing something in a future packet to approve those incentives as well. There is a document in here that Mr. Swanson has provided, just a sketch of kind of what he's thinking to do. I know in his application he also stated that, you know, the ultimate goal would be to build more permanent pita pit restaurant on the property. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Mr. Swanson, this is exciting to see. I grew up eating at that little Skimos facility there overlooking the baseball games. Always thought it was a great location for a restaurant. We definitely need more options in our city, so just excited to see that we're going to do something in that spot and have a restaurant back and be able to view the airplanes that come and go. I mean, we have a whole different level of, you know, we've got the jets that come through. When we used to sit there and eat, those weren't the things that you'd see taking off and landing, so it'd be definitely a great experience. I've had a lot of people reach out and ask what we're going to do for more outside dining areas in the city of Kenai, so I think you're coming in to an area that doesn't have a lot of that offered, and that's really going to set you apart in your business plan. I know there's a lot of discussion because Soldotna does have a lot of outside eating spaces, so it's just great to see you come over and incorporate just something new into our community. So again, thank you for all you're doing in that spot.
Further discussion? I do have just a clarification here, Mr. Ostrander. So the substitute, was there, I presume was there a amendment that was, I know there was one on the previous one about approval for, and I did see I'm kind of scrolling madly through here, was proposed amendment. Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, so the substitute itself did two things. It added something, a little bit to the title, stating that Aaron Swanson does business as Forever Business Plaza LLC. It also added the improvement requirements in Section 5, but I believe that also in that substitute, it did add that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval at the meeting of September 14th, and the Airport Commission recommended approval at their meeting of September 8th.
Very well, thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Mr. Swanson for investing in our city. It's greatly appreciated. I also want to apologize for jumping up to the next one and suggesting a postponement. So I apologize again for that. I'll definitely be voting for this.
Thank you. And I'll also be, any further discussion? I'll also be supporting this and thank Mr. Swanson for his investment in the city and you know, it's nice to see that, you know, we've got that, you know, that rolling and I hear that a few times that some people grumble, I think that we don't have enough places to eat here in Kenai and so hopefully that'll fit well with your business model. Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Substitute ordinance number 3312-2022 is enacted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up, we have ordinance number 3313-2022, accepting and appropriating funds from the State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry, and the United States Department of Agriculture, Forest Service to support the city's spruce beetle mitigation and hazard fuel reduction program, and authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of agreement for this funding. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Baisden.
Yes, I'd like to move to enact ordinance 3313, 2022.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3313-2022? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. I know there was a request in the laydown to postpone this. I just got a little nod from our city manager, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So actually, administration is now requesting that we do not postpone this and that council considers it this evening. The federal fiscal year actually ends at the end of this month, and this ordinance does 2 things. It authorizes me to execute the MOA, and it also appropriates the funds. So if council passes this tonight, that will allow me to sign the MOA before the end of the fiscal year. And I do anticipate that the $385,000 will be approved prior to the next meeting. So passing it tonight would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ostrander. Councilmember Petty.
Yeah, does the motion to postpone, has it been set forth, or do we just disregard that and we just move forward as regular?
Yeah, that was a request in the laydown, so we don't have to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
can just consider
And
it
I'll
as
be
it
in
was
agreement.
on the agenda, yes. Yep.
With this? Thank you.
Any discussion on ordinance number 3313-2022? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Question for City Manager Ostrander. Once we receive all these funds, when can we expect to start seeing the work and the clearing in these areas?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Winger. So once we receive the funds, we'll go out to an RFP to hire a contractor to first do the work in the gully that you can see in the attachments here. I would anticipate that we'll be able to award that contract sometime in late October or in November, which is actually a good time of year, according to the contractors who we've discussed this with, a good time of year to do that work for them. So I would expect you to see work on the ground sometime in that October-November timeframe.
That's great. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to postpone and hold off on working on this till May or June of next year. So we can expect, will the residents that butt up to that area, will they get some sort of notification to expect to see crews in the area working?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Winger. That's an excellent question, one that I will make sure that I talk to Chief Pryor about. He's going to be the one managing the contract, but I'll mention to him that some sort of notification to those folks as they start working in that gully behind those subdivisions would be appropriate.
Great, thank you.
Further discussion on ordinance number 3313-2022? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3313-2022 is enacted.
Thank you, Council. We're on item D9, ordinance number 3314-2022, extending the time period for completion of the action items necessary for the conditional donation of an approximately 2-acre parcel to be subdivided from a portion of the 6.8-acre more or less portion of the east of Track 4A Barron Park 2022 replat, Kenai Peninsula Borough, parcel number 04501035, to Triumvirate Theater for the development of theater facility. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Bazin.
Yes, I'd like to move to enact ordinance 3314, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3314-2022? Mr. Rizzo.
Good evening, everyone. Joe Rizzo, 55761 Mantasta Avenue, Kenai, Alaska. First of all, I'd like to express Triumvirate Theater's appreciation for this council in helping us from the very beginning to set this donation of land aside so that we would have a place to rebuild the theater after it burned down. Especially I'm thankful to City Manager Ostrander for his guidance and help in that. We are at a point where the fundraising for this project has gone very, very well. I'm very proud of our community right here just in our town with, you know, some foundation grants and businesses. We've raised over $700,000 for this building here. And that doesn't include the Rasmussen money. That's local donations and some matching foundation grants. We held a fundraising event that some of you were at, which is delightful. For those of you that missed it, we're going to try and show that film again in October if you'd like to come. For those of you that came, bring a friend, bring them on down. That night, by the time at the end of the summer, thanks to many Hillcore employees, we raised $116,000 by that night that we did that little dinner and film, and then sending children out into the theater after watching 75 minutes of this propaganda about building a theater. We got an additional $53,000 in pledges from the 40 families that were there. So that gives me a great deal of confidence about completing this project. We have 2 very large donations still hanging out there that are pending. We have a Murdoch Charitable Trust grant that I am just finishing the last supplement stuff for that I'm sending on Friday. They will consider our $500,000 ask in November. I expect to know about that before the end of the year. The other one is miraculously we ended up on the appropriations bill with Senator Murkowski's office, which is a huge deal for us. It's $1 million appropriations if it happens. They, of course, cannot guarantee anything, but we do hear from staff that we have made a significant step towards getting those appropriations.
Do you have more, Mr. Rizzo? You can wrap it. I'll give you a couple minutes to wrap it, or a couple seconds to wrap up there.
I'll just wrap up. We're probably not going to know that whether or not we got that appropriations from maybe till December or January. It's hard to say. It kind of puts us in a kind of a time crunch because we basically have to wait before we can design this building. We have to know, are we designing a $2 million building or are we designing a $3 million building? And so that's going to slow this process down a little bit. I suspect that having a federal grant is also going to slow this down a little bit, but we are delighted at the opportunity to be able to obtain these funds. So if anybody has any questions.
Questions, Council, Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Mr. Rizzo, for coming before us. I know with interest that the Planning and Zoning Commission at the meeting a week ago did approve your presentation, and I would note that of all the organizations that we have donated land to in the recent past, the decade maybe, you have been the most transparent, clear, and were able to project in real dollars and a timeline what you were about. We propose to donate land, and some don't even show up to the council. So we appreciate your vision, and we appreciate your ability to express yourself to us. But that's your job. You're an actor.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Mr. Rose, for, again, coming in front of us. I can't echo enough of what Vice Mayor Glendenning said. I agree. I appreciate your detailed information you put in the packet. One of my question was, can you refresh my mind of what the goal is, dollar-wise, that you're trying to raise?
When we first got the cost estimate from the architects, basically in designing this building, they said, get what you think you're going to need, and then we'll figure it out from there. And so when the cost estimate came back, it was really kind of a shock to us about how expensive it was. Since then, we have met with Blasey Construction and the architect and said, okay, if our funding package is only this much, are we still going to be able to build a building that where the nonprofit can still fulfill their mission? And so that's kind of where we are right now, is kind of trying to figure that out.
Further comments, questions? Councilmember Petty.
Yes, Mr. Rizzo, thank you so very much for the efforts and the collaboration with the children who provided information on that documentary that we had the privilege to witness. And this is a wonderful legacy for the current children and our children's children. And so I am happy to postpone and work with you in any way to collaborate with y'all to get the best that we can have for our community. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Joe, for coming in. Sorry I missed your event, the last one you held. I'll be at probably be at the next one. I think I told you.
Appreciated your donation, by the way, James.
Thank you for that. And that is one thing. I know probably most of us have donated. I don't know, do we need to declare anything for the donations that we have made towards this? I guess maybe since we don't have legal here looking towards.
As the chair, I'm gonna rule no, and I'll have Scott slap my hand on this because no one's gonna there's no financial gain for any person that would vote on this, which is an extension of a previous action. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, do we have Scott online?
Yes, we do.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize he was on.
I just want to be transparent
Yeah.
if there is an issue.
Maybe, Mr. Bloom, were you in on that?
Yep, I agree with you, Mayor Gabriel. I don't see any conflict.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Joe.
Councilmember Sonert.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Mr. Rizzo, thank you for just pushing so hard to get the fundraising done and to get matching grants. And this is going to be so exciting for our community when ground breaks. And I'm just very excited for you, and I'm looking forward to catching the show in October. Thank you. Further
comments? I'll just say I support this extension. I appreciate you coming in and keeping us apprised of a realistic time frame for you to get the work done. I think even then we had the original was July of 2023, and which is a ways off, but you're foreseeing that and giving us plenty of time, which I appreciate. And I just want to say I did go to your fundraiser and had a great time. The whole concept, the hors d'oeuvres and something you did over at the Meriden, and then walking over to the theater. And what was it, Out of the Ashes, I think was the name of it, which was pretty well done. It's not propaganda. It's a pretty interesting film, but I will complain about one thing, and that's the difficulty of those of the trivia questions or the.
I told you, don't argue
Yeah,
with the children.
I don't, yeah. Yeah, I felt, they're pretty good, but very well done, and I appreciate that, so. Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Rizzo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bring it back to council, comments, deliberation from council. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, just a point of order. Do we need to make an amendment noting that the whereas, this is a motion, whereas at its meeting on September 14th, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this ordinance?
Yeah, there was a memo for that, yes. Would you like to make that
Yeah,
amendment, Mr.
I
or Vice
thought I
Mayor?
blurted it out as an amendment, but I can repeat it.
Yeah, go ahead and make the motion, please.
Okay, I move that we add to the, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth whereas, at its meeting on September 14th, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this ordinance.
Second.
Unanimous?
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there an objection?
Mayor
Councilman-
Gabriel,
Go ahead.
I have an objection, and it's only because it's the sixth whereas, not the fifth.
Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, the
I
sixth.
can count to six.
2, 3, 4, I have 5 here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This does reflect 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, did you scroll?
Missing the whereas ordinance 3219/2021 required the development of the property be completed by July 16, 2023. So he's missing the second whereas in his packet. Well, I'll see if mine's missing.
I didn't touch my computer, it's on you.
Okay. Well, just for clarification, the one we're considering, that would be the sixth whereas, is that correct? There was no, we didn't, there wasn't an amendment from a draft that pulled out that second whereas, Mr. Ostrander, that you would know?
No, Mayor Gable, in the ordinance 3314, there wasn't an amendment. It should be the sixth whereas.
Okay, very good. So I guess I would ask Mr. Vice Mayor Glendenning to amend his amendment and then a concurrence of the second to the sixth whereas.
I'll amend my amendment to delete the fifth whereas and declare it is the sixth whereas.
Thank you.
Second, and that's for unanimous.
Concurrence of the second. And unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Yep.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
I don't think it's appropriate to delete the fifth whereas.
No, I think he just said deleted the fifth.
The fifth, as I stated it.
Yeah, the fifth.
Delete the fifth whereas.
Crossing that out, making it the sixth is the way I understand it to be, so. Yep.
Could we have the clerk clarify what you heard?
Thank you. Yes, the amendment as amended is to amend the sixth whereas clause with the word approve.
Yes, which is what I believe we were trying to do here. And unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we now have ordinance number 3314-2022 as amended before us. Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonert?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3314-2022 as amended is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have item D10, ordinance number 3315.
Mayor?
Oh, yes, let's take a 5-minute Eddie's. Back on the record. Council, we're now on ordinance number 3315, item D10, ordinance number 3315-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund and public safety capital project fund for costs in excess of the budget amounts for the fire department apparatus bay door refinishing project. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Baisden.
Move to enact ordinance 3315, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3315-2022? Seeing none, read by council. Comments, deliberation from council. Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes.
Councilmember Sonar.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Councilmember Weir.
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau.
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3315-2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3316-2022, amending Kenai Municipal Code 14.20.150, conditional use permits to further clarify roles and responsibilities of applicants, the planning director, and the planning commission in the conditional use process. Pleasure, council. Councilman Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move we enact ordinance number 3316, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3316-2022? Seeing, hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, council really recently enacted ordinance 324321, amending KMC 1420-150 conditional use permits to improve the conditional use process for applicants and public. Recent public hearings at the Planning and Zoning Commissions and Board of Adjustment hearings demonstrate further changes are needed to define roles and responsibilities within the process and improve decisions made by the commissions. And there is a sectional analysis. I would just like to make some observations regarding this this chapter 14. Reading from our code, and duties and powers. Duties and powers of the Planning Commission shall be to interpret the provisions of the Kenai Zoning Code and make determinations when requested by the administrative official. And also, in their list of charges, they are to promote public interest, understanding of comprehensive planning, platting, zoning, land management, and other issues relating to community planning and development. Also, I'd point out there's just a little overview here of conditional use permits, and the intent is that it's recognized there are some uses that may become compatible with designated principal uses in the specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. The conditional use permit procedure is intended to allow flexibility in consideration of the impact of the proposed use on surrounding property and the application of controls and safeguard to assure the proposed use will be compatible with the surroundings. The Commission may permit this type of use if conditions and requirements listed in this chapter are met. Allowed uses are in the land table. Just an outline of the administration and enforcement regarding planning and zoning administration enforcement. The administration and enforcement of the zoning code is a direct function of the planner under the supervision of the city manager. The city planner functions, among other things, he works for the city manager, but the city planner shall have all the functions and may exercise all the powers necessary to enforce the zoning code. So I wholeheartedly recommend that we pass this conditional use permit ordinance. I understand that Councilor Naxted has some amendments, and I'd yield the floor to him if he cares to proceed. Henry?
Before we go to amendments, I guess we got to just open up for council comments or discussion. And if there's none, then we can go to Mr. Nackstead. Is there any discussion on the ordinance as submitted? Excuse me. Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I think we've seen quite a few Board of Adjustment hearings, many conditional use permits. I think there is definitely a lot more work that needs to be done with cleaning up some of this. I think this is a good start on cleaning up. One of the things for me is I would like to see more weight coming in from our planning and zoning director. And if there's some sort of evidence or something that needs to be brought to our attention, I'd like that to have heavy weight behind it. Not just based off of we've checked the boxes, this meets a comprehensive plan, and sit back and not be able to ultimately have hands off. I would like to make sure that we're continuing to get that weight in from our hired professionals. So I will be in support of this.
I guess one other housekeeping before we move on. I think there was an amendment, a housekeeping amendment. Vice Mayor Glendenny, if you'd propose to make that regarding on approval by planning and zoning.
Yes, Mayor Gabriel. It's meeting on September 14th. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended adoption of this ordinance.
I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
I move that the whereas stating that at its meeting on September 14th, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended adoption of this ordinance.
And just for clarification, that's the last whereas.
Second that and ask for unanimous.
Thank you. Seconded, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the ordinance is amended. Further discussion? Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, on page 212 of the packet, N13, I have a memo of some thoughts, and what I'd like to do is read the initial thought into the record, and then follow up with the amendments as we go. So I sort of apologize for reading in advance, but it's probably the best way to continue. And I'd like to emphasize, first off, before I do that, is anybody in the public has a right, for whatever reason, to appeal the decision by the Planning Commission. It doesn't matter if it's a good reason or a bad reason or how good, but I do believe that our planner and our commission have done a great job, and it really has, this really will not stop that. It doesn't make any difference as far as the public, what they want to do. So I'm gonna continue here in my memo. The ordinance proposing changes to 1420-150 conditional use permits does little to further define roles and responsibilities of the planner or the planning commission in a constructive way. Instead, the proposed changes make it easier to attack the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and arguably switches the burden from the applicant to prove the conditions and the ability of the commission to impose conditions. Restrict the commission's flexibility regardless of how good the findings may be. The public always has the right to appeal these changes, largely place the decision of the commission at a greater risk by imposing more restrictions. I'd like to start with bringing your attention to section 1420-150A. And I move to delete the proposed amendment at the end of the paragraph.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So you've sort of explained the reason for the amendment. Councilmember Nackstead, did you want to elaborate at all, or?
Well, did somebody second the amendment?
Yes, it was seconded.
I didn't hear. Oh, yes. I was waiting for that. I didn't hear. substantial findings are good, but all lesser findings should also make up the evaluation by the commission. Additionally, the city ordinance, that is the code, are not always completely inclusive, and the commission needs the ability to make applicable restrictive findings that could be outside the code. Additionally, Kenai Municipal Code 1450-150F, which is farther down there, provides that the applicant has the burden to show by substantial evidence that all 6 required criteria for a grant of a CUP are met. This new language adds a necessary burden on the commission to substantiate a CUP.
Further discussion on the amendment?
Basically, it's shifting the responsibility to the planning and zoning where it really is the responsibility of the applicant.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
A question. Looking at your memo, so we're going 14.20.150A.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that was, so if if you're following along with, on Councilmember Naxted's memo, that was what the proposed amendment that he made was to delete the proposed amendment at the end of the paragraph, and then that was his reasoning for that. So what the amendment would do, backing up to your amendment would go to, I would kind of bounce back and forth here.
Well, what it would do, it would delete the added words at the end of that section A under 150. Would delete those additional words, added words, but must be based on findings supported by substantial evidence in city ordinances.
Yeah, so basically it would just keep that status quo. Is that correct?
It would. And the point is, again, that a lot of the findings aren't in code. There are other things, and it is the responsibility of the applicant to support the conditional use permit.
Any discussion on the amendment?
Yeah.
To the amendment? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Where the word findings supported by substantial evidence and city ordinances, substantial means it has to have some substance. So it's an affirmation or a rejection of the applicant. There's 14/20/15. It talks about burden of proof definitions, but more importantly, it speaks on the term substantial. And we're here on 14/20/150F, definition of burden of proof. And it speaks to substantial evidence is such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind might accept to support a conclusion. The substantial evidence is just a idea that substance has to be involved in the discussion. But the most important part of the burden of proof is that the relevant evidence is accepted by a reasonable mind, and that's a legal term. I believe it's given as jury instructions. The amendment that I am making talks to factual findings and supported by substantial evidence as defined, which means that any grant, denial, or modification or revocation of the conditional use permit, it is discretionary, but it has to have some thought behind it. It has to have people have to roll up their sleeves and dig in and find that is this grant a positive thing, or are we going to deny it, or are we going to modify it, or revoke it? It's simply a roadmap for a discussion path. Thank you.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. The term substantial doesn't mean what I thought it did before the planning and zoning meeting. And Mr. Glendenning alluded to that you could replace the word substantial with a reasonable mind, which doesn't really, it's just another vague term. And the attorney is online here who defined that for planning and zoning. So Scott could further clarify that. It goes on with and city ordinances, but there are other things that support findings than the city ordinances. And what it does is it kind of narrows it down to a common, reasonable mind in city ordinances, and not necessarily anything else that might be pertinent or exact.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just would like to let you know, Henry, we're only catching every few words of what you're saying. So we're sitting here trying to keep pace with what you're discussing, and we're missing out on every few words. I did ask for the audio to turn up, but just so you're aware, we're only catching, or I guess when you turn your head, not catching every word you're saying.
I apologize. I'm looking down at my paperwork here. So can you hear me now?
Yes. I can hear you okay. Councilmember Petty.
Yes, because of the challenges with communication, I'd like to move to postpone this to our next meeting.
Councilmember Basin.
Yeah, I would like to reach out here to the vice mayor, because the communications are very difficult right now.
Was that a second?
I'll second.
So we got a motion to postpone this to our October 5th meeting. Is that correct?
And Mayor, if it's not time sensitive, is it time sensitive anyway?
We need a ruling from the clerk. We're coming up on an election. When does that term toll? When does this ordinance fall off the table?
This ordinance wouldn't fall to the floor until after certification of the election and seating of new members. So the October 5th meeting will still be a viable ordinance.
So the motion, so we're going to discuss the motion to postpone to October 5. Discussion.
I'm ready to proceed, but if Henry's technically challenged, then perhaps the polite thing to do would be defer till October 5th.
Yeah, I'm finding it a bit disjointed, I guess, myself, just kind of following along. But Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I would like to proceed going along. I understand that we're having some challenges. It was written out here. Looking at the proposed amendments that were submitted without hearing what Mr. Naxton has to say, I am not in support of what I'm reading in a lot of the amendments, and I would be ready to go forward.
You know, presumably that would be the case at the next meeting if it's not time sensitive. It might move along more smoothly, I guess, is what my point is. Further discussion, Councilmember or Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes, I'm ready to proceed. We have his written statement, and we can adjust. I'm ready to continue. Thank you.
Councilmember Petty.
So we will vote on the motion to postpone.
That's what's on the floor right now is the motion to postpone. We will vote on that. Yes.
Thank you.
We're discussing that. And again, since I
Mayor Gabriel.
yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Naxton.
If you can hear me, and I didn't realize it was a difficulty until now. I think that courtesy would be if I have you have what's written here, and I provided that really for everybody naturally. And but Mr. Glendenning has some objections to some of it, perhaps, and I cannot efficiently argue it back if you can't hear me. So I respectfully request that it be postponed as on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what was my position, is that I know there's going to be, you know, I don't suppose that the author of the sponsor of the ordinance would approve or go along with the amendments that you've made, and there would be rebuttals back and forth. It would be nice to be able to hear both sides of this as we move along. And that was my whole point, is that even though it's not time sensitive, I think we can wrap it up the next meeting, but for out of the courtesy of the body, I would be in favor of postponement. Further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll. The motion is to postpone until October 5.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
No.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
No.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
So that will be
You
on
have, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go
You
ahead.
have 5 yes votes and 2 no votes. Ordinance number 3316-2022 is postponed till October 5th, 2022, with a motion to amend on the floor.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have item D12, resolution number 2022-64, approving the renewal of a lease utilizing a non-standard lease form on airport reserve lands between the City of Kenai and the Federal Aviation Administration, excuse me, for the automated flight service station and satellite communication network facilities on Lot 7A-1, FBO subdivision number 5. And there was a request from administration through our agenda approval to postpone this to October 5. With that, pleasure, Councilmember Baisden.
Do we want to move to adopt it
Yes.
first?
Yep.
So a move to adopt, give me the ordinance or the resolution? 2022-64.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-64? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Pleasure, council.
Request unanimous consent?
Well, we don't have a motion to postpone yet. Councilmember Petty.
I'd like to,
Well, but we're approving it. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, this was just a public hearing, Councilmember Nixon.
I'd like to make a
Right.
motion to postpone until October the 5th. Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there a request for unanimous consent?
I'd like to request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Is there any objection? Seeing none, ordinance, resolution number 2022-64 is postponed to October 5th. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-65, approving the use of the Fleet Replacement Fund for the purchase of 4 Ford Police Interceptors utilizing the State of Alaska Equipment Fleet Card. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Baisden.
I would like to move to adopt resolution 2022-65.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2022-65? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Mr. Ostrander, can you give us a, I know we don't normally purchase 4 new cruisers in 1 year, but a little overview.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So the 4 vehicles actually represent the 2 vehicles that were slated for replacement in FY22, so last fiscal year, and then the other 2 are for this current fiscal year, FY23. So we were unable to replace the vehicles in FY22 because because Ford was not recognizing Alaska State contract pricing. Just recently, we have an opportunity to buy these 4 Interceptors under the state contract pricing, so this would get all of the vehicles that we needed for both FY22 and FY23, and we still think that delivery of these is probably potentially in excess of 12 months.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Baisden.
I'd ask for unanimous.
Thank you. Unanimous was requested.
Yeah, just a,
Oh, Vice Mayor Glenn, go
yeah,
ahead.
just a question. The Interceptors, they are a sedan as opposed to a pickup truck?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Vice Mayor Glendenning. They're an Explorer, so they're not sedan, but they're an Explorer.
Good job, thank you.
Further discussion? See none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? See none, Resolution number 2022-65 is adopted. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-66, amending Kenai Municipal Airport aircraft parking fees. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to adopt resolution number 2022-66.
I'll second it.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-66? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. If we could, from the city manager, to maybe get for the public what this means for the parking fees.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Baisden. So this is for aircraft parking fees, so actually those that are on the apron. And back in summer 2021, so last summer, we started more strictly enforcing the folks that were parking. A lot of folks were parking there, and we were not charging them for that. But what came out of that was the recognition that there's a big difference between someone who parks very briefly, reloads or whatever, and then leaves and is only there for a matter of minutes versus someone who's there for 24 hours. So what this resolution does is it provides a graduated schedule so that if you're on the apron very quickly, it's only $25. If you're there for 12 to 24 hours, it would be $50. So really what it does is recognize those folks that are there very quickly are going to pay slightly less than what they would have historically.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on resolution number 2022-66?
I would ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent
Request
was.
unanimous consent.
Yep. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-66 is adopted. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-67, allowing the City of Kenai City Manager to execute Federal Aviation Administration grant agreement for airport improvement program project number 3-02-0142-072-2022 at the Kenai Municipal Airport. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Baisden.
I'll move to adopt resolution number 2022-67.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-67? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Give us a little bit of an overview on this one, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So this is an FAA grant for 2 pieces of snow removal equipment. Actually, Mr. Conway can explain the equipment much better than I can, but it is a grant in the amount of $140,000, which is the 93.75% share of the FAA. City would be responsible for 6.25%, or $9,375. Just so council does know, this is very time sensitive, as again, the federal fiscal year ends at the end of September 30th. And a matter of fact, on this one, there is no guarantee that this grant is going to be able to be finalized before September 30th, but we're hopeful with the passage of this by council tonight that we can get this grant approved before the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So do we have to have the equipment in hand for it to take place, or it just to have it purchase started?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Baisden, the grant agreement, the execution of the grant agreement needs to happen before the end of the fiscal year, which then that execution of the grant agreement allows us to then go and purchase the equipment. So no, it doesn't have to be purchased before the end of the fiscal year, but the grant needs to be fully executed before then.
Thank you for a good follow-up.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. What's the chances of the airport having this piece of equipment for this winter?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Baisden. I have to defer to Mr. Conway on that.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Baisden. We are in anticipation of this, have started the procurement process and of acquiring the quotes. So the chances of us having this before the first snow flies are fairly slim, but before the end of the year, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe unanimous consent was requested. Is that correct? Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, resolution number 22-67 is adopted. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-68, authorizing a 2022 budget transfer in the airport fund Airfield Department for amounts in excess of budget amounts caused by employee retirement and above average snow removal activity during the fiscal year. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Basin.
I'd move to adopt Resolution 2022-68.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-68? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council. Vice Mayor Glendening.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. This is an example of the legislation we passed earlier that, and would, well, regardless of the monetary amount, this is the function that you're desiring to be able to do this.
Mr. Ostrander.
My only observation is, when we make a budget, we forecast certain categories and whatnot. And if there are, excursions, that would be good to know so we can better forecast or at least appreciate and understand when we're deliberating the budget what a situation can be and might be, and it might save us time in May. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-68 is adopted. Last up on our public hearings, we have resolution number 2022-69, authorizing a FY 2022 budget transfer in the general fund street department for amounts in excess of budget amounts caused by above average snow removal activity during the fiscal year. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Basin.
I'd move to adopt Resolution 2022-69.
Second.
Request unanimous consent.
Let me go. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-69? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there an objection? Vice Mayor Glendening.
Yeah, just a question. How far did we overshoot our forecast, even though we had an exceptional snow year? Was it a factor of 10%, 20%, lots, or barely?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Vice Mayor Glendening. I believe, and Mr. Eubank can correct me if I'm wrong, but this overtime increase of expenditures represents the amount of overtime we went above what we would. It is the amount above what was budgeted. So I believe you could use this 7,200 as the amount of overtime that we expended. The only thing I don't know with absolute certainty is that 100% of that overtime was a result of snow removal. But we did exceed our overtime budgeted amount by $7,200 in the streets department.
Okay, thank you. The rest of it's hard to know. Thank you for your explanation.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-69 is adopted. So that brings us to item G4, action approval. Appointment of the October 4, 2022 election of precinct boards for the October 4, 2022 regular city election. And you'll see that in your packet. I think hopefully we could just approve the whole slate at once. Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I declare a possible conflict with the 2022 election precinct board appointments, as I am an appointee to one of the boards.
What is the role, I guess, of, I guess let's dive into, and I see Michael Sonart is also on there.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. There is no conflict with Councilmember Sonart serving on the board. She's not on the ballot this year. However, there would be a conflict with her appointing herself to a board. So at this point, if she wants to abstain from the vote on that, that would be in order.
Thank you. Councilmember Winger?
Yes, thank you. Maybe we can get some clarification. I understand that Susan Smalley had withdrawn from serving. Was that on the borough because of a conflict of interest because her husband is running a write-in campaign?
Thank you for the question. Of issues at the borough level, I'm not aware. The borough hires and determines the board member. So if Ms. Smalley withdrew, I am unaware of the circumstances.
Thank you. So that is my understanding, is that she did withdraw from the working elections with the borough because of a possible conflict of interest because her husband, Hal Smalley, is running a write-in campaign for the school board seat. So I would like to, I don't know how we would go about doing this, but I would like to not approve Susan Smalley.
Maybe a little guidance here with, because we're dealing, I guess this is for Kenai, our election in the city of Kenai. Mr. Smalley isn't running a campaign, so, but when she withdraws, would that be for our precinct too?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, it would be for our precinct. The memo was written before Ms. Smalley had withdrawn. So an amendment to take her name off of the list would be in order.
Okay, very good. That's just what I wanted to know. Okay, so first I'll roll that Ms. Sonar I'll be allowed to abstain from this vote. Now we've got the motion would be to remove Susan Smalley from the slate, or at least under Kenai number 1.
Yes, do I need to make that motion?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to remove Susan Smalley from Kenai number 1.
For a second. Councilmember Naxton? I don't know if you're waving.
Yeah, I'm thinking, but I have a question because I wanted clarification from the clerk that Susan Smalley, in fact, has pulled her name out to do this.
I'm sorry, you cut out very badly there.
Can you restate?
I'm yelling at my city provided screen here. All I heard was speculation from a council member that she dropped out. Can you confirm that that is the case?
Yes, she did drop out. The circumstances as to why she dropped out, I am unaware of, but she did drop out.
Yes.
Okay, that's all that's important. Thank you.
Yes, so that validated the motion. I had the same question, so once she's seen that, so. I still don't have a second, though.
I'll second.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion on the floor to remove Susan Smalley from Kenai number 1.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Councilmember Petty?
Yes, I would just like to say that thank Ms. Smalley for her dedication and volunteerism in her making the voting process here in our city smooth. And I appreciate her honesty and integrity, and just wanted to say that publicly and put it on the record, and I'm for unanimous consent.
Thank you, and I would like to echo those. I always appreciate any election volunteer that comes here. I see Ms. Fraze in the lobby, like Cloud, along with some of the other gals, Ms. Seaman, and just there's a lot of effort that goes into that, and I certainly appreciate them doing that.
Thank you. Mayor Gabriel, sorry, I did not get the motion to approve or the second, the original motion before we had amendment. Those need to be on the floor before we amend. At this point, I just need a motion to approve and a second.
Motion to approve the action approval for the
Oh, I see.
2022 election precinct board.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Okay, and now, and the amendment stands and was approved unanimously, so we have
Yeah,
a
we were
motion on
just-
the floor is amended.
Yeah, we were just getting there. There was a unanimous consent requested for the motion to remove Susan Smalley. Was there any objection to that? Seeing none, we now have the main motion now as amended. I do have a question. Under Kenai 2, you have 2 positions that are to be determined. We don't have another meeting before then. How does that work?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So the code allows that the clerk can appoint at this point. However, I will say that we do have a full board there, but because our code prohibits me from appointing individuals who are not city residents, I couldn't bring those names forward, but the borough is employing them, so the other individuals may not be city residents, but they're borough employees.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
Ask for unanimous?
Yes.
Gabriel?
Yes. Councilor Naxton?
Since we're removing people from the list, I think it would be appropriate to cite those that are on the list for each precinct, if the clerk could read that into the record.
Thank you.
Ms.
Kenai number 1 will have Carol Freese, June Harris, Kit Hill, Paul Claben, Joan Seaman, and Virginia Walters. Kenai number 2 will have Barbara Norbeck and Karen Manel, and to be determined. Kenai number 3 will be staffed with Sharon Efta, Deborah Sonart, Mike Efta, Michael Sonart, and Rebecca Lunsford.
Thank you. So unanimous consent was requested on the motion as amended. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion carries. Next up, under action approval, we have item G5. Kenai Senior Center has a residual beneficiary of the Tamara Diane Cohn Testamentary Trust and options for management of funds. There was a memo placed in the packet from Mr. Ostrander and Mr. Eubank, or through Mr. Ostrander from Mr. Eubank, that sort of outlines 3 options for this. If I'm reading this right, it says that we were, through this trust, residual trust was 1/3, which is approximately $700,000 total, and $700,000. So this would be the purpose of this memo is to seek council's directions for these funds. So it says, besides being left explicitly to the Kenai Senior Center, no other limitations were placed upon the use of the funds. So we have option number 1, which is outlined, which would, in this one, I was a little bit confused about maybe, actually, you know what, Mr. Eubank, would you mind just sort of giving a little overview of all these 3 options? So,
Mayor, do you want to get an approval for this first, to get it on?
Yeah, let's do that, sorry. Councilmember Basin.
Make the motion to approve the Kenai Senior Center as a residual beneficiary of the Tamara Dan Cohn Testamentary Trust.
I'll second.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Before Mr. Eubank gives you a summary of the 3 options, and I know Ms. Romaine also would like to speak to this as well. So what we're asking of council tonight is ultimately to choose option 1, 2, or 3, but we will follow this up with legislation that will actually adopt that option. So tonight, the action approval, you made a motion to approve the residual beneficiary trust. Once there's discussion that's occurred, I would like to see an additional motion from council that says specifically that you want option 1, option 2, option 3, or maybe a combination of those, whatever council decides, but we'd like to get away from this with specific direction from council so that we can then draft the legislation that reflects that for consideration at your next meeting. But with that, if it's all right with the mayor, I'll turn it over to Mr. Eubank to run through the options.
Thank you. Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just a little bit of more information too. So to date, the city's received 2 separate payments. The first payment was almost $621,000, and today the senior center forwarded over a check for an additional $94,600. So to date, the senior center, as a result of this trust, has received $715,585.23, so a sizable chunk. In putting together this memo and proposing some options for council, I stepped back and I looked at kind of the fundamentals of budgeting from a governmental standpoint, and you know, the basis for this is that when you receive one-time money like this, this isn't a reoccurring type revenue source for the city. So when funds are received and they're one-time funds, the general prescription is that they not be used for an operational purpose. You don't want to create a program or something that at the end of these funds, you have to come up with another revenue source in order to pay for it. So you look to one-time purchases or something like that. So option number 1 is we would appropriate the funds. Actually, we wouldn't appropriate the funds. We would accept the funds into the city's general fund. We would bring legislation before council that would designate those funds for the purpose of senior citizen programs at the Kenai Senior Center. And then in the future, as these one-time expenditures are identified, such as capital things, and I listed the 3 things that came out of the city's 5-year capital plan that were for the senior center. Those funds could be appropriated at that time by council for those projects. Those funds would be invested with our normal cash. It would not be invested with our permanent fund, and they would be utilized as such until all funds were expended. And then the funds would be gone. That is one option that is there. The second option is to create a permanent fund, much like the city's general land sale permanent fund, where the funds would be invested with our permanent funds. We would estimate a acceptable annual appropriation or transfer out of those funds, like our general land sale permanent fund, which is approximately 4%. And those funds could be used for operations at the senior center, or they could be used for any capital during each fiscal year, but there would be an annual distribution limited to about 4%. The third option is to, again, invest those funds as a permanent fund for the senior center. So we would invest those just like our other permanent funds. We wouldn't necessarily take annual distributions. They would be more periodic distributions where earnings would accumulate in the fund, and as one-time non-recurring projects are identified, like capital projects, you would appropriate the earnings towards those projects. You know, it could be 3 years, could be 5 years, could be 10 years, it could be one every other year. It just depends on how the projects are identified. But that the funds would be as a permanent fund again and have a longer lasting impact. So those are the 3 options that I kind of laid out, and I hope that you understand the rationale behind them.
Thank you, Mr. Eubank. Quick question, under options 2 and 3, what would be on a $700,000 balance?
About 30,000.
7%, annually? $30,000, okay. Very good. I just wanted to kind of get a sense, or give folks a sense of what would be available annually under distributions, options 2 and 3. Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Terry. So, unless we hear something different from Kathy, I don't know if it's proper for her to give her opinion too on what takes place over there. It seems like an endowment like this is generous, and it seems like you'd want to do this like we have with our other permanent fund, is have it to where it's invested and inflation proofed, and only 4% is coming out or whatever's appropriate, to where the senior center can then fund projects, whether it's a $100,000 project that takes 3 years to fund, whatever that is, and those priorities. It seems like that'd be appropriate. That way, we could use it for things right now, I'm sure, and be done with it. I'm not sure that's the most appropriate or fiduciary way to do it. That'd be my comments.
Mr. Romaine?
Hey, Gabriel?
That'd be appropriate. Hang on, Councilmember next. I'm going to have Ms. Romaine sort of weigh in here, okay?
Sure.
Before we bring it to council. Kathy?
Mr. Mayor, through City Manager Ostrander, it is a good day for the Kenai Senior Center. This, just to give you a little bit of history for those who don't know, Tamara Cone is the daughter of Chester and Mavis Cone. They homesteaded on Beaver Loop, and off of Beaver Loop had quite a bit of property over there. Chester's on the rock outside, if you know, and Tamara was their daughter. Mavis passed away in 2016. We knew that we were mentioned in the will after her daughter had passed. We knew that that was coming. not knowing, of course, when. And Mavis was a big proponent of the Kenai Senior Center. So this is a testament to those who come before us and the long time thought and process that went into the Senior Center and what impact it's made. So on a personal note, I agree with Councilmember Baisden. I think my own personal preference, if I can weigh into that, and I've looked at these and talked with Mr. Ostrander at length through this, is number 3. There's a reasoning behind. I think it creates a good legacy for the Cone name. I think the Senior Center has never received anything along this endowment. Kenai Senior Connection received a smaller endowment many, many years ago. It's grown into the permanent fund that they have today as well. The Kenai Senior Center in name has not received that before. So this is a big thing for us to do. In looking at it too, I think we have a lot of different projects coming up. We don't know what the Bluff project is going to do to the backyard of the Senior Center. You know, we'll have a sloping bluff. We don't know what that looks like yet. And so I'm all for putting this in savings at different times if we need to use the investment out of it. But to keep it there for projects that we have coming up, we don't know what those projects would be. But I think it makes good sense to do that.
Yeah, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Kathy, could you, you had mentioned that you had a recommendation for if the council chooses to make this a permanent fund, you had a naming recommendation?
I think so. I think if, considering in the will it is through Tamara Cone, knowing that it's from the family Cone, that it would be the Kenai Senior Center Cone Permanent Fund or Cone Memorial Permanent Fund. And we leave it in the name of Cone. I think it also opens this up to other, we received a nice bit from Joanna Hollier's granddaughter many years ago when she passed just about 5 years ago, and that got swallowed up in our budget that year. We didn't have a provision for this. So I think it would open the door for other endowments, other folks to think along this line and definitely honor it. So, and putting it in the name of Kenai Senior Center Cone Memorial Fund along that line.
Thank you. Discussion from Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Kathy. That was really my question as I was wanting to know where you guys were weighed in on this. I think we've heard a lot of testimony over the time about wanting the emergency backup generator, and I still hope that that's in the vision for capital projects for you guys. I'm an advocate on being prepared, so I do see the benefit of that. And I just appreciate you weighing in on that because that definitely helps me come to my decision as well. So thank you and congratulations.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Kathy said most of the things I was thinking. I vacillated between option 2 and option 3, but I believe option 3 gives the senior center more availability of money and if they want to use it. And so my position would be to go with option 3. I also appreciate the fact that with this fund there that it also provides basically a bucket for a place, if you will, for anybody else that wants to donate some funds in the same sort of way, and it would increase and add on to this. So, and I have no comment on the name for Mavis and Chester Cone for friends of mine since day one, frankly, neighbors, and I appreciate them, and having their name on the fund is appropriate. But my vote would be for option number 3.
Yeah, I believe that. Go ahead, Councilmember Petty.
Yes, I'm inclined to option number 3 because it gives you great longevity and honors their legacy, and having their name on that is an honor to their love of the senior center. And so my choice is for option 3 because it leaves all your options open. Thank you.
Further discussion? Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll be a commissioner someday. Yeah, we're just kicking a can around now. There's going to be specific legislation, and we will have all the numbers projected so we can make our recommendation, or are we just going to, on the fly, designate thousands of dollars? We're picking options 1, 2, and 3, or were we going to have further discussion and legislation proposed to us? I'll give it a little more thought.
Yes, no, and that was outlined previously by Mr. Eubank, is that this would be followed by legislation establishing the outline, what was outlined in each option. So, yes. Councilmember Basin.
I'd like to make the motion to move option 3 to have administration bring back to council what that would look like officially for us to vote on.
I'll second that.
Is there unanimous consent?
I request unanimous consent.
Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that option is approved, but I would like to, I didn't get a chance to weigh in, but the first thing I did when I saw this memo was what a generous gift to the senior center in the city. And honestly, what I thought was, that's a lot of pies. I mean, because I think in terms of money with the senior center, I think the currency is pies, it seems like, but certainly do appreciate that generous gift from the Cohn family. Next, that moves us to commission committee reports. Council on Aging.
No new report, although the commission is having a special meeting, and help me, Kurt, is it on the 29th at 3 o'clock? For Kathy?
Councilmember Naxted, yes, it is Thursday, the 29th at 3 o'clock. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry I didn't have that written down.
Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. The Airport Commission met September 8th. Minutes are in your packet. Nothing else to add at this time. The next meeting is October 13th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Harbor Commission.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Harbor Commission meeting was postponed, and our next meeting is November the 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission.
Parks and Recs will be meeting in chambers here on October 6th.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The Planning and Zoning Commission met in chambers here on the 14th, and they had a public hearing regarding Resolution PZ 2022-23, and they did recommend the City Council enact ordinance the 3316-2022, which we postponed today. New business action approval. This passed also unanimously, recommending that the city approve the ordinance 3311-2022, determining the real property in Gusty subdivision is not needed for public purpose. We had an action approval recommending that the City Council approve ordinance 3312-2022, determining Lot 4, Block 1, Gusty subdivision amended is not needed for a public purpose. We had an action approval recommending that the City Council approve Resolution 2022, was XX at that time, approving renewal of lease on airport reserve lands between the City of Kenai and the FAA for the flight service station. And finally, we had action approval recommending the City Council enact ordinance 3314-2022, extending the time period for the completion of the Triumphant development project. And the next meeting, 28th, was canceled due to lack of agenda items. And that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautification Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Beautification Committee met last week on Tuesday, September 13th, and their upcoming event is the annual Pumpkin Festival on Saturday, October 8th from 12 noon to 3 p.m. Hopefully, there will be a pumpkin for every child to take home, assuming the donors come through. There will be pumpkin painting and face painting and cider and hay bales for climbing and a hayride.
And what day was that?
Saturday, October 8th,
October 8th. Very
12
good.
noon to 3 p.m.
Under Mini Grant Steering Committee, there is no report. Do you have that proclamation? Sorry. So every once in a while, I'll get a request for a proclamation. Some of them I don't think may not be necessarily germane to the city of Kenai, but this one came across. I think I felt strong enough about it. I think it would be something for us that would be worth making this proclamation. And what it is, it's a proclamation to declare the week of September 25th through October 1st as Childhood Cancer Awareness Week, and this is oh, that's a moose right there. He's out in the field right now, I can tell you that right now.
It's almost Sunday.
No, that's why he's calling. I guarantee if I was out there, I'd be doing the same thing. I sounded that listen just like a, oh. Yeah. The grunt. We got the grunt and the cow moan too at the same time. That's great. At any rate, I'll just take a moment and read this. I usually like to stand up and read this. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and the Kids Cancer Connection report, cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children between infancy and age 15. This tragic disease is detected in more than 16,000 of our country's young people each and every year. And whereas 1 in 5 of our nation's children loses his or her battle with cancer, many infants, children, and teens will suffer from long-term effects of comprehensive treatment, including secondary cancers. An estimated 400,000 children and adolescents are diagnosed with cancer globally each year. And whereas founded nearly 30 years ago by Stephen Firestein, a member of the philanthropic Max Factor Cosmetic family, the American Cancer Fund for Children, Inc., Kids Cancer Connection, Inc., along with Lions Clubs International, are dedicated to helping these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient psychosocial services to children undergoing cancer treatment at the Children's Hospital at Providence, Alaska Medical Center in Anchorage, as well as participating hospitals throughout the country, thereby enhancing the quality of life for these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection also sponsors toy distributions, family sailing programs, pet-assisted therapy, Laughter Noon, Laughter is Healing, KCC Supercar Experience, positive appearance programs, educational programs, and hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery to fight the battle against childhood cancer. Now therefore, I, Brian Gabriel Sr., Mayor of the City of Kenai, Alaska, hereby proclaim the week of September 25th through October 1st, 2022 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Week. In the City of Kenai, encourage all citizens to help increase public awareness and support for the children and family who are affected by cancer, dated this 21st day of September, 2022. So that was a proclamation I felt was worthy of proclaiming in the city of Kenai. So, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. Next up, I got a notice in August, on August 12th, that a letter that sort of brought out our finance department, and I'd like to read this too, because I think we got the best finance department around, and I mean, and I think sometimes budget time we see that star shine, and you know, like I said, I always sleep better at night knowing we have Mr. Eubank at the helm of our finances. And so it's nice to see that there is some recognition here from not only from, I think what we see, but from other folks. So I get this letter from the Government Finance Officers Association. Dear Mayor Gabriel, we are pleased to notify you that your annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021 qualifies for GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting, financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. When a Certificate of Achievement is awarded to a government, an Award of Financial Reporting Achievement, or an AFRA, is also presented to the individuals or department designated by the government as primarily responsible for its having earned the certificate. This award has been sent to the submitter as designated on the application. We hope that you will arrange for a formal presentation of the Certificate of Award of Financial Reporting Achievement and give appropriate publicity to this notable achievement. So I just wanted to, and then it also goes sample news releases included to assist with this effort. And we hope that your example will encourage other government officials in their efforts to achieve and maintain appropriate standards of excellence in financial reporting. So with that, thank you, Terry. Half the time I do that, I think I'm going to get a noogie out the door because he just is so humble about what he does here. Thank you, Terry, all the work you do. I also wanted to say that I did eventually, I attend the Triumph Theater fundraiser. It was an awesome event. And if you haven't seen their production, their movie that they put out, I believe it's called Out of the Ashes. It's very interesting and it kind of gives a really detailed history of the founding of that and what they had to go through. And it was to create the original theater out there, which was pretty substantial. I think it took 5 or 7 years to from start to finish to get that going. That was after starting out in the Peninsula Center Mall. So interesting. And then last thing, Silver Salmon spin on Monday. Which is kind of a cool event I like to do every year. I get to do the final spin for I've been honored to do the last couple of years to do the final spin for the $5,000 this year grand prize and for the adult and the $1,000 youth prize. And again, both youth and if I understand, hopefully you got a number of the total entrants in there, but it was a substantial number apparently. Sounds like it was a good fishing year, but a lot of people that showed up over at the visitor center, and both the youth and adult winners were in the audience, so they got to could see that. So very, very fun event. And with that, we'll have voting before our next meeting, so I just encourage everybody to get out and vote. And with that, we'll go to administration reports. And I'm curious if we're going to hear a gunshot when I go to the city attorney, but I guess I'll start with city manager, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just a couple things tonight. I am excited. We're going to do leadership training for 20 of our employees, both department heads and supervisors. It's going to start on October 3rd. It's the first time we've done it here at the city. The firm that we're using is FutureSync, and the way we got aligned with them is they've actually done leadership training for both South Peninsula Hospital and the Kenai Peninsula Borough. So anyways, it starts on October 3rd. The training lasts for approximately 4 months. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at, each one of these training is customized for the organization that they're providing the training for. They talked to a bunch of the folks who are going to be taking it, got a sense of where they felt the organization was at, where our weaknesses are, what we need to work on. So some of the things we are going to work on is working on having that difficult conversation with folks, leading change and transition, and then another one is in team engagement strategies. So it's going to be a great opportunity for those 20 folks to get together and really, I think, help develop that team and hopefully work on some of those weaknesses that have been identified. So excited to see that getting started here shortly. Sad to announce that Max Best, Willie Anderson, Mary Toll, the trifecta, the crack interim planning department have all left this week. But we do have Linda Mitchell now, who's in the back there. I think most of you met her during the break, who is our new planning director. And her planning assistant is Carrie Baroni, who came on, well, she's been working here for 8 days now, so she's the long term. So Carrie came on the week before, and I'm confident that both of them are going to do a great job. Again, it does warrant thanks from Max, Willie, and Mary for the outstanding work that they did in a period that could have been really difficult for the city. And like Mayor Gabriel said, the Kenai Silver Salmon Derby was an incredible success this year. I unfortunately don't have the number of people that participated, but I can tell you that 364 fish were weighed in. So a ton of fish this year. There was 314 adults weighed in fish and 50 youth. So, and the winner, the adult winner, was Ronald Duvall. He won the $5,000. And the youth winner was Abigail Craig. She won $1,000. Interestingly enough, the magic weight that Mayor Gabriel spun was 5.36 pounds, which was exactly the size of Abigail's fish, 5.36 pounds. And Ronald Duvall's fish was 5.32 pounds, so only 0.04, so 4/100ths off of the actual magic spin. Smallest fish of the Derby was 4.16 pounds, and the largest one was just shy of 14 pounds at 13.88 pounds. So again, it was a really successful Derby, and excited to see where that thing goes in the future. It continues to get bigger every year, and I think that it's just going to continue to get better. And the last thing I have is the Bluff project, of which there is no update, although that's a good thing, because anytime we are dealing with the Bluff, it seems like when the Corps gets involved, things slip, but it has not yet. We're still looking at April 3rd for a bid release. So that's what I have, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, when last we met, there was discussion about the dog park was construction interrupted because of a high water level. Do we have a path going forward to get it substantially completed or substantial progress before freeze up?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Glendenning. So I did talk to Mr. Curtin about this today, and we went out there to see if there was something we could do to get rid of the water that's there. And we dug a test hole, and the water table is 32 inches below right now. So the water table is extremely high. I went by and looked at it yesterday, and the water is still there, inches deep across most of that area. Until that dries out or we're able to drain it in some way, there's not much we can do. So it really is dependent on whether or not we can get that water out of there. We were hoping that we could dig a hole and actually drain it through, but the fact that the water table is so high is not going to allow that to happen. They'll continue to look at it, figure out if there's a way to get rid of that water. The water has to be gone, though, before we can get any sort of equipment in there. Like I said at the last meeting, it is our objective to get that done. This is an unfortunate situation we found ourselves in, but we're going to continue to try to work towards getting it resolved.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, well, just one more thing. The Triumph property is right next door. Is that situation impact it?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Glendenning. I'm speculating that the water table in that area is similarly high. The one difference we have at the dog park is actually with the clearing and grubbing that's been done, that finished grade now at the dog park is actually almost a foot below natural grade. So that has really created that ponding in that area that you see. So we haven't dug a test hole in the Triumvirate property, but I'm guessing water table is very high in that area as well. The one thing that gives me some confidence that will be fine for development is that we have development all around that area, including on the other side of the street where the city shop is at, and then the Beacon facility is also over there. So I'm hopeful. I think work needs to be done to determine, if high water table is going to be a problem in that area. But based on some of the surrounding development, I'm hopeful that it's going to be okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. Just a couple of questions. I've had a lot of approaching on where we're at with a lot of our capital projects in our city. They're wanting to know where Wildwood Drive sits, the cemetery sits, the status of the rec center, and those were all last year's capital improvement projects. Do you think at the next meeting you'd be able to bring something to us to kind of tell us where we're at with last year's capital projects as well as this year's capital projects, and maybe what the plan will be to get back on track with our completion of our projects.
Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Winger. I can ask Mr. Curtin to come at the next meeting and provide you an update. His mid-month report does have an extensive summary of all of those projects, and you can read that and know pretty much where they're at. But if you'd like to, during my city manager report at the next meeting, you can ask him those questions specifically. I will tell you that Mr. Curtin and I talk about this consistently, and it's something that we're aware of, that these projects that should have been done earlier are lagging, and we're continuing to work to try to move those along. But I'll make sure that I invite Mr. Curtin at the next meeting, and you can have a discussion with him.
Thank you.
Further, Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Paul, two things I noticed today on the city website. I was going on there looking for voter information for one of my kids, and I know I'm familiar with it. Is there any way that we can put a link right on the front page that will direct people directly to their, right now, since it's 2 weeks out voting, that would get them to the voting page a little bit quicker, so they don't have to go through the menus, and maybe that's for the clerk to answer. And then also on the main page, on the right side of the page, you can scroll through some different topics, and one of the topics that's still there is the city's response to the COVID pandemic. I think it's outdated and needs to be removed. I don't think that information needs to be there any longer. If you take a look at that too.
Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Baisden, I agree that is outdated. It should be removed. In regards to the link on the webpage, I would defer to Ms. Sainer.
Thank you. Our ability to edit the front page is limited. It would be a hot topic, and yes, I can add an election hot topic, and I can also remove the COVID hot topic while I'm at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll go to the city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I don't have any comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did you have a moose coming into your call there?
That wasn't me. That was the moose. Sorry about that. I thought that was you.
Yeah. Any questions of the city attorney? Yeah, many questions. Yeah, I agree. See, then we'll go to city clerk, Ms. Sainer.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So absentee voting is happening here Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It will be open here 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Election Day. Last week, I think it was last week, I was over at the borough and participated in the logic and accuracy testing on the ballots, which is a public event, and disappointingly there was no public there to watch the process. And we are full go election, getting stuff ready. We'll have election training here for our precinct and a few others on the Friday before the election. And so it's all elections in my office right now, if you didn't notice.
Didn't notice that. Any questions of the city clerk? Seeing none, we'll go to additional public comment. Is there any from the general public that would like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll go to council comments. Henry, let's start with you. You're online.
Okay, thanks. I hope you can hear me now. Oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to yell or what, but I do appreciate the postponement of ordinance 3316-2022. I had full intention of working our way through that tonight, but if you can't hear me, then it's kind of difficult. So I do appreciate council approving that. Lastly, I'd like to thank the Cone family for the donation to the senior center, and that would be Chester, Mavis, Tammy. Brian and I went to high school with Tammy. I'd known her since we were tiny, and her little brother Curtis. And all of these people are gone now, and this will help us remember them really forever, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Petty.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to welcome our new planning director, Ms. Mitchell. Welcome, and I look forward to having the privilege to work with you. Also, I wanted to say thank you to the Finance Department and the leadership of Mr. Eubanks on that accommodation from the state. If you'd give my thanks to all your department. I would highly suggest when you have the opportunity in October to hear and go and see Out of the Ashes on the Triumphant Theater. It is very, very enriching, and I look forward to the legacy that Children's Theater will provide for our community. I would also like to echo the thanks to the Cone family and the legacy that they're providing for the Senior Center, and that those legacies will go on for a great long time. Also, even though the Harvest auction is sold out, everyone has the opportunity to participate if you did not have the privilege to get tickets, because there's silent auction happening right now, and you can go over and bid on beautiful opportunities that are there for the silent auction. I recommend that you do that. So thank you for the lively discussion and all the work that we were able to do tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Student Representative Silas Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Don't got much to report. Same as last meeting. We have the parade Friday, as well as the homecoming game, and then Saturday we have the homecoming dance. The theme is disco, and I look very much forward to that. It's going to be amazing. We have the esports team is starting up. Its first game competitions will be next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So that's one more thing to look forward to, I guess. And other than that, nothing really to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Sonart.
I'd like to say welcome to Ms. Mitchell, and congratulations to Ms. Romaine on the gift from the Cone family. Thank you to the Cone family, and congratulations, Mr. Eubank. Outstanding job, and not to be left out, Chief Ross, you go get those 4 vehicles.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too would like to say congratulations to Kathy and thank the Cone family and welcome Ms. Mitchell aboard. Congratulations, Terry, for running an outstanding unit there. And Chief Ross, I especially would like to thank you and your guys for their diligence in patrolling bus stops. I know you've received quite a few phone calls. It is appreciated that they sit there. Just a reminder to most people, please be cautious from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. as kids are exiting the bus. The buses aren't pulling all the way up on corners, so if you're at a 4-way stop and you see kids exiting, please be vigilant. Don't move, don't go, because poor Mr. Ross gets quite a few phone calls from a lot of very upset moms, and then they have to come sit there to patrol a bunch of adults that don't want to be mindful in bus areas. This is a continual issue, so again, huge thank you from our neighborhood. It doesn't go unseen. We definitely appreciate it, and I know all the kids walk by and give a nice little wave to them. I also had was able to be there for the spin of the Derby. My 9-year-old just absolutely loved it. He was a little jealous he did not get a fish in the mix, but congratulated all the winners. It's always great to see the participation growing in that. I'd like to remind everybody that the Kenai River Marathon is having their annual marathon this Sunday. The events start Friday from passing out bibs. Saturday, they're doing the spaghetti feed for the marathon runners. And then Sunday, you will see people running, so be mindful. The course goes from the chamber, goes down bridge access. Some of the runners, just depends on what part of this you're running. Some of the runners will come down Beaver Loop. The rest will go through and do the full 5K run through Soldotna. So just be mindful Sunday. Be patient as people are crossing. Appreciate KPD usually does a great job with controlling the major crossways for that. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, for your cancer proclamation. I just want to add a little more information. There are many programs that are beneficial for youth cancer. Those are something that's near and dear to my heart. Some of the programs are St. Jude's. You can make a monthly contribution to St. Jude's and be a partner in hope. There's also another program called The Cure Starts Now. The Cure Start Now gives every penny of the money raised for cancer research for brain tumors known as DPIG. Many youth unfortunately end up diagnosed with that, and they're seeing more cases in adults as well. And then finally, there's another program called Be the Match. So if you are interested in going and possibly being a donor for somebody, you can do the quick little swab, send it in, they'll have you typed out, and then if you're a match to somebody, you would get a call and ultimately have a chance of saving someone's life. So those are the three areas to just kind of step up and help within child cancer. I would like to say go Kenai Cards, go Homecoming Bonfire is always a great thing. And I get out and vote, and thank you for everyone for the conversation.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'd like to welcome on board Director Mitchell, and I know you'll do well, and you come highly recommended, and you sit upright and pay attention, even at this late hour in our meetings. You're to be congratulated. And to Kathy, the receipt of the Cohen money is phenomenal. They're just an old line family, and we're instrumental in development of this town, and we're longtime supporters. And it was good to point out that the name's on the rock outside, and it's just good that the old timers are remembering us, and yeah, it kind of a little bit. Yeah, get out and vote. We have election coming up. All elections are important, and just show we care about our city, and voice your selection, and we will carry on, and just I don't know, growing a new hand. I don't know, just getting old has something to do with it. I'll persevere, and Marion tells me to keep standing straight up, so I will. And I'll just wake up every morning and just hope I don't have to breathe through an oxygen tube, and just carry on. How's that for a dark view, Marion? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to our new planning director. I did pick up that the city manager said we had 3, and now we only have 2, so you've already put, it looks like you already reduced staff for the new planning director, so that's a good thing, I'm thinking. So it means that probably Max Best really wasn't doing a whole lot. No, just kidding. Max does great work. Mayor, I want to thank you for the childhood cancer proclamation. I know a lot of families have been touched by childhood cancer. We lost our niece of 2 years old, Emma, and it changes a family whenever that happens. It's difficult, so thank you for that. And in that same vein, the Kenai Central High School volleyball girls team is having a fundraiser for Killing Cancer on October 4th. They're having a silent auction and dinner to support 2 local families who are dealing with that. So if you get a chance, come out and support them.
Thank you. That brings us to item L1, executive session. Councilmember Naxted. Oh, sorry. Oh.
We've lost audio with Zoom. I can't correct it. It won't let me get back in the call.
So who has the motion? Councilmember Sonar. Oh, sorry, I did not know that. Councilmember Sonar.
I'll try this again, 3rd time's charm. I move to enter into executive session to discuss resolving delinquent special assessment districts pursuant to Alaska statutes 44.62.310 C1. This is a matter which the immediate knowledge of may have an adverse effect upon the finance of the city. The executive session will include Mayor Gabriel, City Council members, City Manager Ostrander, and Finance Director Eubank.
Yeah. And City Attorney, Mr. Moon.
And City Attorney.
Do you need a second?
Yes, second.
I'll second.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted can't hear me. Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
And Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be on a different one.
Back on the record, Councilmember Sonart.
I move to reconvene into regular session.
Second.
Discussion on the motion. Request for unanimous consent, maybe?
Request unanimous consent.
Any discussion on the motion? Unanimous consent is requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we are reconvening. Councilmember Sonart.
Okay. Council provided direction to administration and city attorney regarding resolving delinquent special assessment districts.
Thank you. Seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned.
All right.
I was just, oops.
Goodbye.